Holland Hitch presents rebuild procedures for the Holland XA3501 and XA3601 series fifth wheel top plates. Trucking, it's the backbone of business. And a key part of every 18-wheeler on the highway is a dependable fifth wheel. Since it is the single point that joins the tractor to the trailer, the fifth wheel is a critical component to performance, to safety. Because of its important role, proper maintenance and service are vital. Over the next few minutes, we will perform the rebuild procedure step by step for the Holland 3501 and 3601 series fifth wheel top plates. We will demonstrate how to properly fit the yoke, and we will show the periodic adjustment procedures that are key to obtaining maximum service life of your fifth wheel. After viewing this program, you will realize that this process is simple and straightforward. You'll recognize, too, that your experience and mechanical ability are important for a successful rebuild. The procedures we will demonstrate are found in the manual included in the rebuild kit. Be sure to read this informative booklet and keep it handy throughout the rebuild. It outlines every step of the process, provides photos, diagrams, and parts lists to make your job easier. The manual also outlines several troubleshooting procedures. These are important. You should check each troubleshooting hint before beginning a rebuild. You may find that rebuilding isn't necessary. Rebuild kits are available from all Holland Hitch warehouse distributors worldwide. They can be ordered in many versions. They are available for Holland fifth wheels with either a curbside release or a roadside release. Some kits also include the manual secondary lock or optional lock pin bushings. Check the rebuild manual to be sure you have the correct kit for the fifth wheel you are about to rebuild. This program will concentrate on the standard curbside release with an automatic secondary lock. Other versions will be pointed out along the way. Before beginning to rebuild your fifth wheel, the top plate must be totally disassembled and cleaned. The top plate must be examined closely. If the lock pin holes are excessively worn, the top plate can be returned for a factory rebuild. If the casting is cracked, it must be discarded. Check the rebuild kit and verify that all parts are present. If so, you are now ready to begin the rebuild procedure. The procedure begins with the installation of the locks. Before installing the lock jaws, apply Never-Seize lubricant in the lock pin holes. This is vital, and no substitute lubricant can be used. The next step is to position the lock jaws into the fifth wheel. The jaws are manufactured with a counterbore having a 2 7/8 inch or approximately 70 millimeter diameter on the top, stepping down to a 2 inch or approximately 50 millimeter diameter on the bottom. These dimensions conform to the SAE dimensions of a trailer kingpin. Be sure to install the lock with the 2 7/8 inch or 70 millimeter bore directed toward the face of the top plate. The lock jaws can be put in upside down, so be sure you position them correctly before you continue. Before installing the lock pins, align the cotter pin holes with the main front cross rib. Next, drive the lock pins into place, being careful to maintain orientation so that the cotter pins can be installed. Some fifth wheels come equipped with optional lock pin bushings. In this case, roll pins must be used to secure the lock pins. Once the locks are pinned into place, check for free movement of the jaws. Next, install a 2-inch OD plug between the lock jaws. The plug, available from your Holland distributor, simulates the 2-inch or approximately 50 millimeter diameter of a kingpin. The next step is to install the yoke. This is the most critical operation in the rebuild procedure. The yoke must fit precisely into position if the fifth wheel is to have a maximum service life. To begin, strike the yoke with a mallet to slightly bend the tips outward. Then, slide the yoke in, with the hole facing up, and tap into position. The yoke tips must be flush with the ends of the lock jaws, or extend no more than 1/32 of an inch, or 1 millimeter, beyond. If the tips fall short, it is necessary to grind the outside surfaces of the yoke. Grind only the outer surfaces of the yoke until it fits precisely into place. Use a belt sander or a disc grinder for this operation. Be sure to grind the surface flat, true, and straight. Never grind on the inside of the yoke or on the locks. It is common for the tips to extend too far beyond the ends of the locks. This is due to normal wear in the top plate. In this case, build up the outer surfaces of the yoke using a low-hydrogen E70 welding rod. Then grind the beads smooth. There are 2 contact surfaces on the outside of each yoke tip. Both yoke tips must have full area contact with the top plate ribs. This full contact must also continue along the outer surface of the yoke where it meets the top plate rib. Continue the weld, grind, and fit process until the yoke tips are flush with the ends of the locks and have full area contact against the top plate ribs. After you fit the yoke properly, lube both the outer and inner friction surfaces with a light grease and position it into the top plate. Next, install the spring and yoke shank. The shank has a pre-drilled recess, which must align with the hole in the yoke. Finally, install the lock adjustment tag, the rubber washer, the steel washer, and then the nut on the yoke shank. As we have mentioned, rebuild kits are available with either curbside or roadside release hardware, so it is important to have the correct kit for the type of release you want to build. Let's look at the assembly of the curbside release. To begin, install a 9/16 ID washer over the open end of the handle. Next, pass the handle through the guide hole toward the outside of the top plate. The open side should face toward the front of the top plate. We are now ready to install the cam assembly. Before installing the cam plate, inspect it closely. It should be free of burrs and any rough edges along the cam opening. If burrs are present, remove them with a small grinder. A smooth edge will greatly improve the fifth wheel's ease of operation. Proper lubrication is also important. Be sure to lube the entire cam profile prior to installation. Now, insert the S-bend of the handle into the small hole in the cam plate. Lay the cam on the casting so that the cam opening is over the hole in the yoke as shown. Lay the cam over the lug opposite the release handle. At this point, the cam should be in the position shown. Next, assemble a 9/16 ID washer between the top plate and the cam. The rounded outside edge of the washer must face the cam plate. Next, install the 1/2-inch ID roller. Then, install a second 9/16 washer with the rounded edge toward the cam. And install the 1/2-inch bolt and nut to secure the cam plate in position. The bolt should be tightened securely. Then, check for free movement of the cam. Next, assemble the roller that will move in the cam profile. First, place a 5/8 ID washer between the cam plate and the yoke. Again, be sure the rounded edge faces the cam. Then, insert the 5/8-inch roller in the cam opening. Install the second 5/8 washer with the rounded edge toward the cam. Pass the 5/8 bolt through the assembly. Be certain that the bolt passes through the yoke and into the yoke shank. Tighten the bolt into the recess in the yoke shank. After tightening securely, the top washer must be free to spin. At this point, turn the nut on the yoke shank clockwise until the yoke just begins to move. The locks are now properly adjusted. The Holland hitch fifth wheel features a secondary lock mechanism. This is available in either an automatic version or a manual version. Let's cover the automatic version. Begin by starting the roll pin into the hole in the top plate opposite the cam anchor bolt. Assemble the secondary lock to the torsion spring and place them in position. Be sure the open end of the spring faces toward the rib of the lug as shown. With the parts in position, finish driving the pin into place. Finally, check the secondary lock for spring tension and free movement. This is important since the secondary lock plays a crucial role in on-the-road safety. The manual secondary lock is also installed in a similar way. The prime difference lies in the addition of the secondary lock handle. It must be installed through a hole provided in the top plate and attached to the lock prior to securing the lock in place. Up to this point, you've seen the rebuild procedures for a fifth wheel with a curbside release. The procedure for the roadside version is essentially the same. However, the release handle enters from the opposite side of the top plate. The cam plate is flipped, and the positions of the cam anchor and secondary lock are reversed. At this point of the procedure, you are ready to install the lock guard. First, pull the release handle, remove the plug, and pry open the lock jaws. Then, install the lock guard. Assemble the guard and the torsion spring. Mount the guard into place using the pivot shaft and cotter pins. Now flip the top plate over and check the lock guard adjustment. When properly adjusted, the tip of the guard must be even with the edge of the 2-inch or 50-millimeter bore in the lock jaw. If necessary, adjust the position of the lock guard with a mallet. First, support the end of the lock with a short piece of steel. Then, tap the center of the guard to adjust. This adjustment is important. The lock guard is an aid in preventing a high hookup of a trailer kingpin. Its proper adjustment provides an additional safety feature when using the fifth wheel. As a final check of the completed rebuild, close the locks using a Holland lock tester. Verify that the locking mechanism functions properly. Refer to Holland Hitch publication FW130 for specific details on how to operate the tester. If the fifth wheel does not operate properly, do not use it. Contact your local Holland Hitch representative for assistance. This completes the rebuild procedures of the 3501 and 3601 Holland fifth wheel top plate assemblies. Let's take a moment to cover the PM adjustment of the fifth wheel locks. For maximum service life, the fifth wheel should be checked and adjusted as necessary every 30,000 miles or 50,000 kilometers, or as a part of regular scheduled inspections. Check the locks for a correct fit to the kingpin. First, close the locks. Then, insert the plug in the locks and check for a tight fit. If necessary, adjust the nut on the yoke shank. A counterclockwise rotation moves the yoke down, tightening the jaws. Pull the release handle. Remove the plug and pry open the locks. Then verify this adjustment and the proper operation of the locking mechanism using the tester. Rebuilding a fifth wheel is a simple, straightforward procedure if you perform each step with care and attention to detail. The procedure can be broken down into a few key steps. Inspection of the top plate. Installation of the lock jaws and yoke. Installation of the lock release. Adjustment of the lock assembly for a secure fit. And finally, installation of the secondary lock assembly and lock guard. Remember to lubricate all moving parts during assembly, and be sure to follow each step in the procedure completely. Work carefully and safely during every step of the procedure. Holland Hitch believes that quality equipment deserves quality maintenance. Trucking is a vital part of business and everyday life. Your skill and experience play an important part in maintaining efficiency, safety, and productivity in the trucking industry. Holland Hitch is proud to provide the people and products that go the distance to support you.